Okay, I have something a little existential for today. So let's just think about Beyonce, Queen Bee, right? The best at what she does. Okay. Let's think about the fact that there's 8 billion people on Earth. Therefore, I feel like it's not wrong to conclude that there exists somebody out there more talented and overall just better than Beyonce. And Beyonce is like at the top. So there exists someone, probably, who is better than her. That we'll just never know because becoming famous is like a luck thing. Like, yeah, you gotta be good, but you gotta be lucky. Like, yeah, I'm sure there's a couple bands or singers or performers that come to your mind, and you're just like, how did they get famous? Because they're not good. And of course, art is subjective. What I don't like, you might like. What I like, you might not like. But I'm sure you could think of a few bands or performers where you're just like, I don't get how they got to their spot because it's not good what they do. Anyway, keep going. So there exists someone better than Beyonce. I feel like that just has to be a fact. And that doesn't diminish Beyonce's talent. She's top. But there exists someone who can top that. And think about how influential that person would be on our culture, on our history, yet we'll never get to witness that. So it's this idea of like lost potential. Like someone will live and die and have this potential to be the most influential person to have ever lived and just lost. Now, if you want to believe like fate, right, sure, maybe we're fated. Some people have the fate of being historical legends. Or I shouldn't even say legends, because that gives it like a good connotation. Like historically important figures. Like, you know, the dictators of history. They're not legends, but they're historically important in the sense that we have to learn that history, you know, again, for the sake that we don't repeat it, so that if we see tyranny rising again, like tyrannical leaders, we know what that looks like whatever. Point is, we have to learn that as history to do ourselves good so we could continue our society in a good way. But think about like Michelangelo, who sculpted the David. Like at the end of the day, is it really that good of a sculpture? Like, of course it is. Of course it is. And we could do the whole thing. For the time period, it's great, and the anatomy, they didn't know that much about anatomy, and the way he gets certain veins that were anatomically correct, and these certain muscles that are only present in adolescence, and David is an adolescent in that sculpture. Like, whoa, amazing. But was there somebody at that time period who could have been better than Michelangelo? And we would be saying, well, yeah, Michelangelo is good, but check out this person. Like, their work is amazing. So again, this idea of lost potential, that there exists at any given moment somebody who's just not going to get their story told. And that's another part of it. Who tells your story? Think about Hamilton, who lives, who dies, who tells your story. Unfortunately, there's a lot of history lost to mankind because of things like colonialism and, you know, this like Western takeover of our society and history. And, you know, there are indigenous cultures with deep culture and history and just rooted into way past these ancient civilizations like Rome or the Egyptians. Like, it goes so far back, and we'll never know the full stories. So, as somebody who deals with art all the time, well, capital A, the arts, I should say, it's a shame that we will never know who could have been one of those historical people whose name would live on for generations simply because their story was never told. So it's almost our duty as humans to tell each other's stories. And if you know someone who makes music, or if you know somebody who likes to make art, or if you know someone who takes nice photos and maybe makes home films, like, tell their story. Ask them about their story. And tell other people about that. Because there exists in this world someone better than Beyoncé. And their story just isn't told. Not because they don't have the talent, but because they don't have that luck of making it big and having their story told. So do yourself a favor and do your fellow humans a favor. Tell your story and ask other people about theirs. Now, of course, like I said, I deal with art, so I kind of, this came from a point of like, someone out there might make really good music, and you just wouldn't know unless you asked them about that. We have to ask the question, because not everyone is lucky to make it big. But you might find somebody who makes good music, and you won't know until you ask them. I'm sure you could think of that person, you're like, I didn't know you were a painter, and then you see their paintings, you're like, this has to go in the MoMA now. This is amazing. But to them, they're just, yeah, it's a little something I do on the side. It's, it's no big deal. It's a huge deal. Because art is a creative process where we as humans get to relate to each other without having to speak a word, unless, of course, it's spoken word like poetry or literature. My point being, you could hear a song, you could look at a painting and relate to it immediately, before you're even conscious of the fact that you're relating to it. So it is a big deal. So the next time you find out someone has this creative endeavor, ask them about it. Tell their story to someone else. Tell your story to them. I feel like this is a good time to mention that I'll be releasing a podcast starting next week. We'll be interviewing other people and sharing their stories, which will be a lot of fun. So stay tuned for that. And yes, I edit these in iMovie. Final Cut Pro is way too expensive for me.